segue this is into what's going on with us. All right? Like, everybody's looking at this building data. Peter's life's work on high-performance building technicians, probably one of the most significant things, I think, realizing and identifying a problem. And we got to figure this stuff out, right? But who's going to figure it out for us? Everybody has these options. Everybody has these opportunities. Everybody's talking about automation systems, and a lot of companies are talking. So the most important thing that I'd like to deliver today to show you what we're working on is in 2012, we sat in Atlanta, hot Atlanta, and it was our first ever BEST event. And one of the things I brought up, I said, we need a federation of HVAC educators. And what did that mean? It meant, why are we not all connected? How come we're not together on this? And we talked about facility problems, right? All day. We talked about what goes on in a facility, the politics of your institution. And the thing that wasn't really discussed that is more important and significant for all your institutions more than anything else is the embarrassment of your facilities department the second somebody analyzes how you're using energy. And that politics issue is going to be thwarted by this. And for years, I've talked to organizations, and I'll just throw them out of the lab, and they want to be in front of everything and doing this. And I've been working with Trane for years. A guy by the name of Bob Rick. He's retired now in Tampa, but was the chiller service manager. And we developed a relationship. He brought a lot of donations to us, always kept us in the loop and involved. And obviously Trane's next to us, and it's close. But everybody's heard of NC3, right? Now, John will tell you I'm a tough negotiator because I'm pretty critical about a lot of things if you haven't noticed yet. But NC3 and talking about a rework and not reinventing a wheel, potentially reworking it, working with them to help technical education across the country is something that I think will be good. This is not NC3, what I'm talking about here. It's an idea that's being supported by one of the biggest organizations in the country that's very personal to all of us, and that's Trane. And what we're doing is it started at a state level, and it started reaching out beyond that. And what we want to do is take Trane controllers, because Trane is a big box organization, huge corporation. They walk into your facilities department, and they can drop a controller on your building, and then we can see. And it worked for me a long time ago, pulling ALC data into a screen through a grant, and that's kind of where this concept comes from. What's interesting from an IT perspective is you get fights from the IT department too about what's going to happen in your structure in your building and cybersecurity and blah, 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 blah. You got to listen to all that garbage from the IT department, right? So considering that Trane operates in a cloud, it creates a cyber lock on the system so your IT department can't argue. Your facility department can't argue because nothing stops a Trane. It'll get right through, right? And the other thing is what we're going to do is not think like a bunch of engineers, no offense to the engineers in the room, who have the templates and everything else, and this is the structure and the overcomplication, blah, 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 all that garbage. What we're going to do is we're going to pull data from all of our buildings, and we're going to share it between school to school, and the educators are going to develop a front end on readable points. So we're going to create our own data points, logs, and trends, and everything you've been seeing today with our own graphics. And once we figure that out, we move to the K through 12 experience. Because what's happening in our school systems? The only IT people know is TikTok these days, right? So how do you reach kids? Well, there's a couple of different folds in this and the ideas behind it. And what we want you to understand is not only are we going to develop as educators for our students to see, now we're going to create the link to the grade school systems, the K through 12. We're going to go to the middle schools, and we'll put remember the first BEST event that you guys came to COD with, where I was like having Batman faces on Peter and Superman and ties and all that stupid shit when the temperature would go up and down and the garage doors were opening and stuff like that? Thinking about it differently, because we always look at it, it's the sensor of the quadrilateral flux capacitor and the agent plus 6. We don't need that crap. We need simple stuff that can represent the core concepts kids need in order to get educated, and remove that in the secondary system. And secondary, they can't add anything else. We don't need tech teachers. We don't need a special position. We need a science teacher to go, look at the differential of this coil. How much energy is here? Here's a problem for you. And everybody in this room can design it. These are the people that are passionate. These are the people that believe in this kind of stuff. You guys. And this is where this can really happen. And we need to go in and we need to develop Minecraft graphics around these problems, or something that's personal to these people that connects your community to your college, right? And the other beautiful thing about having a big box organization like Trane, I always call them like a category killer, like a Siemens or anybody else, and sorry, whatever. I'm just going to let them know how I think about it. Is now you have a Trane infrastructure that already exists. So in some of our communities up in Elmhurst area and all these areas, they have Trane equipment everywhere. Now you can turn it on in a second, and now the kids are connected. Now the readable points are connected. Now we're talking to the community. Now we're in that classroom with those students looking at our energy analysis. And John will give you some examples of some other structures that have been set up, but they're not set up, I don't think, from a community college system perspective, the way it needs to be, and how we need to get united. And I want to be able to see Keith's information, right? Jen, when she's up in Wisconsin, what's that like? We're talking about different, different climates. Then we go to the easiest one in the world, California. Where's Peter at right now? Right? Gives advice out to everybody, It's like, so this event and what we're planning on doing and what we're putting together is to create not only a marketing and outreach strategy, but connecting everybody together and to change that secondary education mindset, where we can take the same math aptitudes and plug them into simple equations built around graphics that are appealing to the students, and have these read-only points and connect our community to our community in a federation across the nation. And I've set a lot of standards. John already knows. He goes through this stuff with me all the time, and I'll be yelling at whatever national person is there. But John's a couple of steps away from the president of the corporation, and we have one person that can manage it and use the infrastructure of the organization to unroll this. And it's inexpensive. And we're doing our startup now. Chris Miller is working with us, if you know him, down at Heartland. Keith, we're working on putting stuff together. So think about it. There's an existing infrastructure. There's existing points. There's existing data. Who can push through the facility door faster than anybody else? The big box organizations. This is kind of like as big of a breakthrough, I think, for educators that we can make as we did with Contemporary, and to offer that up to everybody. And John came last year sometime. I first got to meet him with the regional manager for Trane, Nick Hines, great guy. And he said, you got to meet Bob or whatever. When we started talking, and this is kind of what we've unrolled and unraveled, and this is what we're going to do. And it's okay. You can watch. If you want to be part of it, though, this group can be part of it, and I'll help anybody with the pilot that needs that help. And we share our information. We share how we look at data. We share what works, because that's the only thing that's going to change this kind of thing forever across this nation. Because right now it's just one singular point. Let's break that, teach data analytics, and let those kids grow the way that they need to, and teach the technology of tomorrow, right? Otherwise, we're going to rob those children, just like John Dewey said, right? But with that, I'm going to introduce John Dunlap and let him take it from here.
Super. Well, I didn't realize we had a mic.
They always call me the Reverend for a reason. He's been,
You're not that preachy. Come on. First of all, thank you to all of you for allowing me to come in here today. I really appreciate it. As Bob noted, Trane Technologies and Trane, we're a global organization. We're extremely dedicated to decarbonization. We have a gigaton challenge. By 2030, we're committed to 1 billion metric tons of carbon reduction. That's not a 2050 goal, that's a 2030 goal. So we're really engaged around the decarbonization priorities for our globe. But in addition to that, there's a lot of other things that are very important to us. I talk about driving outcomes here, But you're all educators. You know about the importance of driving an outcome. You're producing a student that's going to go into the market space and it's going to solve challenges that the building owners are faced with or the companies that they're working for. So there's a lot of stuff we know that's changing. And I'm going to give you, we're going to go through a couple slides here really quickly just to frame some things up that we realize as our realities. And some of them dovetail into your realities as well. But we're also looking at our social priorities. As an organization, we need workers. Those workers come from the ranks of the students that you guys educate. So we not only need them for Trane, but our industry needs them as well. So this isn't just us being selfish. We're trying to advance and accelerate the need. And when we look at the Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan infrastructure bill, we have never seen an investment in a new energy economy than what's taking place right now. And this is not an event. This is going to be a continuum. And that continuum is going to last for quite a long period of time. So when we look at this, as recent as this first quarter of this year, okay, Defense Production Acts, okay, around manufacturing capabilities just for heat pumps. There are currently about 100 million targeted residents in the United States of America that are eligible for heat pump technologies. Our industry produced and delivered roughly 500,000 last year. 500,000 into 100 million is 200 years. We don't have 200 years, okay? I'm not a climate activist, but that's the harsh reality. The Department of Energy, as well as our current folks up in DC, they want to see that move from 500,000 to 5 million. If we just use that simple arithmetic, it's going to take us 20 years to transition to heat pump technologies. It's going to be a lot of innovation, a lot of things that are going to change. We need more workers, and they're going to come from you guys. Now, that's just on the light commercial, residential spaces, but I wanted to share that just as a framing. When we look about decarbonization, the commercial side of the equation here, the Carbon Disclosure Project, there's a ton of public pressure on it. But what's interesting is when we look at the, it doesn't show up here, there's a payback for these equity markets. Those that were A-rated in their decarbonization efforts outperformed the stock market index by 5.8%. That's a lot to the bottom line. So there's an economic driver behind this. By the way, those that don't report, they get an automatic F. And people are looking at this and they're taking this into consideration with their investments. But public authority disclosure, it's mounting. It's happening right now. I talked with a few folks earlier this morning, just when we look in our backyard in Illinois. Illinois has the 7th largest carbon pollution generation plant downstate. It's called the Prairie State Plant. Okay, our governor last year in September said, "Hey, this is going to be gone, pronto." Okay, he may have other political aspirations, I don't know, but 13 suburban towns and cities around Chicago get upwards of 85% of their power from this plant. Okay, Naperville, one of the areas, that's my hometown. Wow. But most of our power comes from this plant, okay? We're tied to the debt structure of this till 2035. But yet the governor's already said it's gone. So we have to adapt rapidly. And it's a huge challenge for us. I don't think bringing the bears into Naperville is the solution necessarily, but we'll see if it drives some type of innovation. But those challenges are going to be what your institutions are going to face as well. The cities and the towns, we're all connected together. So let me transition to education. This has not been an event for Trane. This has been a continuum. Just like you guys continually invest in your education, Trane has been invested in school education around career technical education for quite a few years. In fact, about 15 years. This education starts down as low as third grade, and it transitions all the way up through not only high school, but into the career technical roles. And I'm proud to say that we're already at a graduate level with some of our courses that we're teaching, utilizing the data that comes out of buildings in our data analytics certificates. So, sure.
Are you going to be talking about the gymnasium concept? Just so that it paints a
Yeah.
reality picture for them.
So, with that experience with the eighth grade student, yeah. So we had probably about 6 months ago a situation where we were working with a junior high school, and the principal of the school had a young man that came up and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Mr. Principal, we've got a problem." And he leans in. He says, "Yeah, what's the problem?" He says, "We're wasting energy on Saturdays and Sundays. Our gymnasium, it's got a spike in utilization of heat. That's not necessary." "Well, Jimmy, let me check into that for you. I don't know what you're really talking about." So this is a seventh grader that's involved with these types of programs, and he's learned how to harvest information through the data pump, through our virtual living learning lab, and he's identified a fiscal opportunity to save money for the school district. Okay, he's pulling on the principal's shoulders. "Hey, come on." Principal did his diligence, came back a couple days later, as we were told, and said, "Hey, you know what? We have bitty basketball on Saturdays." He goes, "Okay." And he says, "What about Sundays?" He goes, "Well, we have a men's rec league that comes in on Sundays." "Okay. How much are they paying you for that space?" Because there's a cost to that energy. To heat, cool, dehumidify, filter that air, as well as the lights, okay? Because they looked at all of this data. This is a seventh grader thinking differently. We're building skill sets. The youth of today marinate more data than any time in this history. It's going to continue to grow. So if you think that you can avoid that in your curriculums, you'll probably be missing the boat. This is not a nicety. It's really going to become a necessity as part of the HVAC training protocols, okay? But this isn't just for that traditional student that's matriculating through elementary school. It's about those individuals that are upskilling and reskilling, and or in Chicago, we're taking a look with some of the programs with those that are coming across our borders and being bussed into our urban centers that are needing opportunities for growth as well. So again, just a couple little things, little details, problem-based learning. I heard Bob talk about PBL earlier for our BTU crew. This is curriculum level content for our K through 12, includes lesson plans, and it's very detailed, assessments, knowledge checks. It's really designed to be modular. So it's not rip out everything that's there. It could be cookie cutter. We also take into consideration ESL, or English as their second language. We have this translated into different languages as well. And then we also, as Bob talked about, was National Coalition of Certification Systems, or centers. Trane has been a partner with them from its beginning. It's a great organization. I'm not trying to pressure you or say that you have to do this, but it's something to consider. Again, it's stackable, it's hands-on curriculum, competency-based. The one thing is there's zero cost to the students. So just throw that out there. It is also got a pretty significant footprint across the country. But when we look at Department of Energy and some of their initiatives, you know, we heard on the previous presentation that, you know, there's a lot of focus about how we can utilize this data to train. Artificial intelligence is going to be part of this. Not only does Trane use AI as part of their analyzation of the data that's coming out of these buildings, but we have very specialized data and awareness around air handlers and chillers from our years of work in this area. So we don't look at this, like I said earlier, as an event. Like we were looking at just a simple timeline. We want to use this program to help you guys get an educational return on the capital investment your community stakeholders are putting in your infrastructure. Okay? Give the students the ability to look at trending data, just not one little picture. Have them be able to pull up the trend lines to see seasonal trends, 90-day trends, multi-year trends. Think about it. We talked about different humidity and delta T's in our communities where we live. You know, Chicago is going to have a lot of different demands on our building infrastructure than someone out in Southern California or up in Wyoming or someone down in Florida. So again, it expands the world in which your students can learn from. They're not all going to stay and be townies. They're going to move. All of us have probably had some movement in our career. So why not build their skill sets and help them learn about buildings from different areas? Again, speaking to data analytics, okay, it's woven through everything that we do now, and it will be in the future. And the concept of this virtual living learning lab, it's really not that hard. We're not looking to come in and replace your control system. We can back that in. You don't need tens of thousands of points. You don't need your entire campus. You can start easy with one building, a couple hundred, 500 points or so, 1,000 points, and begin to tie into your other colleagues across the country. It expands that learning environment, and it gives you the ability to be dynamic in what you teach. Quite frankly, it's hands-on, problem-based learning that the students can also come alongside your facilities infrastructure teams and help identify opportunities around energy conservation measures. Where do you want to invest those dollars as the chief business officer or CFO of your institutions?
And one of the key things that I hope you guys understand about this, obviously, Trane being the battering ram, I get to drive through every facility door. That's what that's about. But if you think about, go back to contemporary controls and why the emulator was designed. It's because of this group. Now, understand to that same level and how important that was in developing a learning exercise at home, and understand that Trane all the way to the top is willing to work with us in what we design as educators to work with us.
Yeah.
That was the negotiation.
So we're not looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars of investments. We're not looking at millions of dollars of complete guts and ripping out stuff. It's simple, you know. It's a nominal cost, and
Thank God for back that, right?
yeah, and where we can find the opportunities to come and partner to identify, you know, federal, state, or local grants to help smooth the transition over.
District level existing infrastructure that can automatically, and we can't be limited to just schools.
Yeah.
What about the city buildings? What about the other folks that already have Trane equipment that now students can learn on and participate and bring, again, I'll say it because I don't know if we truly understood it the first time, bring your community to your college and the marketing exposure and what that could be like.
So just to expand on that, this isn't something that we've just started. We've been doing this for some period of years. We have communities, we have, you know, hospitals that pump into this data set. We have county buildings, other municipal buildings, police stations, fire stations, airport authorities. What it does is it allows students to learn about different buildings and how energy is used, okay? But they can go out. You know, someone has an interest in becoming a med tech or a nurse. All of your programs have these areas of interest, right? Well, if you're learning about data analytics and you want some industry relevant certificates, great. Trane doesn't have everything just focused in on HVAC. We have 4 industry relevant certificates on data analytics that go through the NC3 program. So if a student wants to use you know, their data set for their projects and certifications that comes from a hospital, or an airport or a city hall, they have that option
Or
as well.
establishing basic dual credit opportunities with your institution, again, with all the feeder schools.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways that this will continue to evolve. I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk with you today. I know that, when we're storming and forming, we need leaders that are going to step up and have those courageous discussions and find ways to bring this into your organizations. I know, and I believe that building automation controls, it's not going to be a nicety. It's a necessity with these investments that we're making. I'll give you one quick caveat. I was just walking a project in urban Chicago, 37-story tall vertical building, okay? Built in 1973. How many BAS systems would you think are in that?
4 or 5.
Okay. It's a blend of pneumatic and 7 different proprietary-based BAS systems, all outdated with no security patches, and they're barely keeping this building going. Okay? We have truly dedicated operators, and they have been at the mercy of value engineering in the plan and spec world, and they're like, what are we going to do? Okay? So we're involved with that particular project, but that's not an anomaly. That's pretty much the norm. So is there a lot of lift? Yeah. Do we need more people coming out of your programs that have good fundamental skill sets and knowledge about building automation controls, just baselines? That's a given. We need programs to take this to another level so the product that's coming out, they're walking into $100,000 careers at year 2. And that's the reality at Trane. Go ahead.
To reiterate his point, it is very normal for buildings that have been around for a minute to have multiple systems. Actually, I'm surprised that it's as few as it is, and I'm sure it's not taking into account different generations of systems from those manufacturers.
Yeah.
I was in a hospital in Denver a couple of months ago, and investigating that building, which was 4 stories, about 300 VAG boxes. We found 5 different manufacturers and 3 different generations of controls with several. And that building had only been up and operational for less than 20 years.
No,
Before the time goes too far,
Yeah.
and what we're doing, let me make another point. I don't know if John's going to get there or not. One other thing, Trane's not just building automation. Trane's not just maker of chillers. They're manufacturers of HVAC equipment for everybody's program anyway. And what was there's a package for it's a $50,000 package for $11,000.
yeah,
educational,
our residential package.
which can include heat pumps, all
yeah,
that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Because we're going to do a heat pump off with everybody's stuff anyway, just to run it against my thermostat existing home for the county. It's a county-wide operation. They kept bringing it up, and I said, let's run a test.
Yeah.
And let's monitor it all.
Yeah.
But there's other packages and things involved
Yeah.
too that can help your programs. And if it does, more
Yeah,
power to
so
it. Don't
so
forget that.
each, like our residential packages, they contain a blend of heat pump technologies, a little air handler, and some high efficiency furnaces. If you went to the street to buy it, it's about 40 grand, depending on your market. Jason Bingham, our president of our residential franchise, I should say our CEO as well, he has drastically subsidized that. I think it's $11,400. So, I mean, you have to purchase that through Trane Direct, not go through your distributors, and that's tied into that NC3 program. But we do have some opportunities to provide, not low-end technologies. This is the high-end. And oh, by the way, the Inflation Reduction Act, okay, all of the incentive dollars especially for our Justice 40 communities and our energy zones, okay, there's a lot of dollars out there for families to transition to high efficiency systems, okay? Plus on top of that, your local utility incentives. Not going with 80%. In fact, you can't even get 80% efficiency furnaces anymore. You know, January 1, that changed. They have to be 81% or higher. So the dollars to subsidize the cost of these are pretty significant.
And it's not just rooftops, residential, refrigeration. I mean, it's just, there's other opportunities, just like with contemporary, where it's ridiculous discounts. And again, we have one point of contact for us as educators, which big organizations, we all know, operate like Spaceballs. Right? Yes, that's the bottom line. So,
Go ahead, Lee.
John, how are you proposing that we approach facilities directors with this, right? Because there may be some fear, they dig down the data and people might be mismanaging our buildings.
That's a great point. In fact, we do hear that where if you go straight to your facilities leadership, they're like, oh, well, you're going to expose the deficiencies in my ability to get things done, right? And
how's that usually excused, though? It's excused when you ask, as an educator, to have access to that. Obviously, nobody believes in access and equity in education. It's just a front. But when you ask, they always deny you unless you got a train coming through the front door because they can't hide.
well, there's a couple different best practices I'll share on that. One, think about it from the mindset of fuel and friction, okay? Your facilities leadership has probably been, managed through carrots and sticks for fuel, okay? In my mind, I approach things a little differently. It's about how do you remove the friction, the things that are causing them to not want to move forward, okay? They, unfortunately, have been utilizing, in most cases, an X-ray technology. And technology has advanced. We have advanced second generation, third generation MRIs, right? When you go to the doctor, because you've got a pain, they may do an X-ray, but they're also going to probably go to a CAT scan or an MRI. Why? Because they get more data. You get more detail. So what we're doing is we're trying to help facilities leap forward, and we're going to get an educational return on that investment for the students and the stakeholders in the community. So to that point, I think this is a discussion that you as educators need to have with your deans, your provosts, your chancellors, your presidents, because it gives you an opportunity to also branch and pull your community, those other facilities, into the value of what you're delivering, okay? So this isn't just a simple educational tool. This is a value proposition for the communities. So I would say your engagement has to be at your dean, provost, chancellor, president level as well. This isn't just something like it's Bob's initiative. It's got to be a leadership commitment. So this is where we've got this moving very aggressively in other parts of the country. Down in Pima, they've got the mayor, the county, they've got numerous facilities and others. So again, I would prefer to take away the friction versus throwing carrots and sticks. So that's just my thoughts, and that's what we've observed from a best practice. It really needs to have executive level engagement. They don't have to be involved with the granular details, but just the awareness. Most of them, and everywhere where we've had the opportunity to discuss this, they want to make this one of their priorities. And that's a good thing.
And it makes financial sense for the institution. That's the best part.
Yeah.
They can't argue with it.
But will local train reps also be part of these discussions, right?
I would say let me channel that distribution, navigate through me, and I will bring those local stakeholders to the table. The first thing is let's get the meeting set, and let's have the engagement with the leaders. We can go through proof of concept. We can do live demos so they can see what it's about, and we can bring in peer-to-peer folks that are at a chancellor or a president level and allow those folks to kind of communicate and talk about how it's provided value to them versus me telling them. Again, I don't want this to be just a John show or a salesperson show. From a workforce development priority, we need these students, and we need a lot more of them. As an industry, let alone Trane, we want the best that you have to offer us, but the industry needs these individuals as well. So
And we have a space to develop the marketing concepts as educators to our community. The availability. This isn't just look at their data. There's a whole creative element, an innovative element behind this as we get together, because those are the people that are going to solve the problems, is us. It's not just going to happen, no offense to Trane, but Trane's not going to figure it out and all that kind of stuff's happening. It's the educators understand what we need to give to our community to create the interest, create the marketing, create the enrollment towards that initiative.
no, it's going to require a lot of folks thinking creative, from a creative perspective, but also how do we build these curriculum models and evolve them? Because every market across the country has unique little needs. So, there will probably be some customization that can be done. I would prefer it that way. Keep it real, relevant, and rigorous for your folks in your communities. So, with that, any questions beyond?
John will be here. What are you doing now?
I'll tomorrow or now, probably Friday morning. I don't know.
He'll be around.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's your specific ask of us?
Do you want to be involved?
That's
what my-
I think that's the first one. Is there an interest that you guys see? Second, I think the second ask is, how do we set that second meeting where we're bringing in the leadership to the table to have this bigger discussion? That would be the second ask. Facilities can be as part of that. That's not a problem. You shouldn't be thinking that you have to hold them off. They're part of this. They're a stakeholder. So.
And this is going to move on our end.
John, could you walk us through a scenario, end to end? What you do, what facilities does, how it helps educators, in terms of the output? Just kind of walk us through step by step.
So the first step is number one, soliciting the interest. That's part of what we're doing here. Sharing the concept, proof of concept, allowing you guys to noodle on that, to think about it.
And the concept is, start with the concept.
The concept is around advanced learning around data analytics and building automation controls. Okay, it's helping to build the curriculum for your students to move beyond just a baseline understanding to utilizing live data, live facility infrastructure. And just like your example that we had earlier, where it was just one snapshot, okay? And look at all of the variables that you guys were questioning, okay? If you have the ability to point and click and isolate all of the points and look at things, all of a sudden it becomes a dynamic problem for the students. It allows them and you guys as educators to be able to say it's not a what if, let's look at it. So it keeps it real. Go ahead.
Well, I think the question is, when I go to my dean, what am I going to be asking her to do? And it's not just have a meeting with you. It's like, they want to put this in the system somehow. What am I really asking?
They don't understand. The controller sits in parallel with your existing automation system. And through, obviously, BACnet and other things, you can discover all those points and pull, like an integrator does, pull all the information into the Trane cloud, even from your existing other infrastructure. Go ahead, Robert.
It would be exactly like the graphic that Michael Bobker showed in his presentation, where you've got your system, they add one component to it, and it reports up to the cloud.
And she is buying that component. and paying a service fee, or, I mean, she's gonna wanna know how much.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So let's say, Keith, you've got Trane down at your facility at SWIC. SWIC already has Trane controls. They've got Trane ensemble, and the ability for Keith is probably a couple $1,000s. Okay, they're already paying for the licensing and everything. We're just mapping them in and creating the access point. There's no major drama or significant cost.
We don't have access to change any points. The whole point is to get readable points.
What would the cost, I'm not asking for specific, but let's say an elementary school, 20 classrooms that does not have a training system. You have
Well, let's
just for
let's take a look at Bob's scenario. Bob's scenario is a Siemens system. Okay. Just focusing on the tech building with the SC Plus, the ensemble unit, and everything. We're looking, below $25,000. Okay, to get all of that data and those points in. So it could be even less. It really depends upon the cost. Go ahead.
And you said earlier on in your presentation that you would help schools find the grants
Yeah.
to.
Well, that's
Yeah.
another discussion.
That's a whole nother layer to this, because now you're bringing in all of the federal monies that are out there around workforce development, community engagement. We have these facilities. Your leadership.
Our Illinois agreement. So they understand that the procurement process through a Spaceballs institution is very annoying, and they need to understand how that's mitigated with.
So, and Trane works through different buying cooperatives. We have a cooperative agreement with Omnia Partners. So most K through 12 higher education institutions are very familiar with Omnia, and they can purchase direct. So there's no requirement to go out to bid. It's relatively simple. Talking about the money, where do we find it if you don't have it in your budgets appropriated? Many folks are already doing energy conservation work across your campuses, so this could be layered in and bundled into that as well. So there's also dollars that come from community utility firms. Case in point, in Illinois, the major producer of power in Illinois is Commonwealth Edison. In Illinois, they have a program that they pay for continuous commissioning. They pay Trane to come in and put a SC Plus in and data pump and start doing continuous commissioning, looking for just not those one events, but they look at trends and make low cost, no cost recommendations. But also they, provide incentives for energy conservation measures on top of that. Bridle that with your money from the Inflation Reduction Act. Now all of a sudden there's an economic value for the institution, but that's the same SC and process that we're doing for the Virtual Living Learning Lab. So
Most of this never happens because you don't understand the layers that are all involved. And that's why I'm bringing John here, so you can understand and have conversations tonight, tomorrow, whatever, and have those conversations, because until you understand the pieces in the most complicated system in the world, education, right? And how it works with your utilities, how it works with, your cooperatives, and how it works from a building perspective, and to push through those doorways and open them up against facilities, open them against your institution. It's no different, and that's the most important piece about having one precipice of control, John, that can articulate everything else down, so we have an access point for that.
Yeah, so there may be some simple, check boxes that funding's already there in your communities that we can tap into. You may already have all of the parts and pieces there as part of your infrastructure, so it's a lot easier to make that leap.
And so when we turn on, we're talking about like Elmhurst school districts, so these kids get to do math problems and turn on their computers and see knowledge of DuPage and jump in to our analytics and maybe insult our facilities department or something like that, I don't know. But it gets people thinking about your institution. It's an enrollment thing. It works from a marketing perspective, data analytics, all the pieces are there. We've been talking about marketing programs and everything else. Let's build a foundation to be the marketing vehicle for our schools. And you could just watch as far as I'm concerned, because that's where we're going. You know, I mean,
Is there like a
Regular
dashboard
maintenance.
you can show us or anything?
I don't have access to that, unfortunately. I was going to have an actual live demo, and I apologize, I couldn't get that all orchestrated today. So that's something that we can definitely do as a continuation of this discussion, where we can do a quick modeling of what it looks like and how it plays out. We do that, you know, in small group settings and large group settings, so we could absolutely do that.
We could set up like a webinar to do that.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Best then.
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
Initiative fit your business model. What do you get out of it?
What does Trane get out of it? Well, we don't exist if we don't have workers providing service and installation. So we need workers. We would like to get the best talent. And if you think about turn and burn, we want people that have the fundamentals already locked in. So their stickiness and ability to stay with Trane and get through just our fundamental training is significantly higher. We don't want to bring someone in that's going to fail. That's not our goal. It's to help them along. So if we're arming them with the ability to come out of their educational experience with the fundamental expectations that we have that are relevant to our industry and to us as Trane, we win. So,
and you're involved in every school district, and they're with that, they're multifaceted organization with equipment and everything else, so the exposure alone is more than a benefit.
so I'll expand on the second part of that, and I think this is very important and relevant as well. We are in a societal expectation for ESG, okay? Environmental, social, and governance priorities, okay? I don't care where your philosophy is on that spectrum. It's a reality that we face in the equity markets, and Trane has been very committed to social responsibility, equity, diversity, inclusion for about 15 to 20 years, where it's you know, I was with the organization 10 years ago. Bob noted I came back. I just hit, actually, Monday was my 1 year mark, okay? Things have accelerated over the years since I was gone, and it's pretty exciting. Our building automation control group in Chicago is over 50% minority mix right now, okay? The average building automation tech at 2 years of tenure with overtime is averaging over $100,000 a year, okay? These are students that are coming out of your programs, going into training. They're not going to the Dollar General store and making minimum wage. They can do things and help elevate opportunity for their families and themselves. So what do we get out of it? We also get a worker, but we're able to address, and hopefully this is where we need you guys, is to help us quantify our social impact, okay? It's one thing to say you're doing things out there, but if we can provide a body of evidence where we know we're hiring these individuals and or they're going into the industry, into career paths, we can quantify our positive social impact to our stakeholders. So that's the second part of this.
One more follow-up question. You had that upfront cost of $25,000 pods or whatever. Is there a maintenance or monthly or subscription type fee associated with this?
Yeah, we're probably talking an annual licensing of around $1,000 to $1,500. It's nothing that's going to break anyone's budget.
And they're working.
And we're working on trying to get that an exception to that right now for education. So stay tuned.
So, you understand what was stated right there? They're working on it. So, understand, we have one of the biggest corporations in the world willing to work with us.
One other question.
Please.
So we talked about a building in Denver, I guess it was, with 7 different control systems and pneumatics.
No, it was
Yeah.
Well, we've got buildings on campus that are using a Barrington system. And that Barrington system hasn't even been supported for 15 years,
Yeah.
but somehow they keep it going. And then they've got some ALC over here.
Yeah.
And in this building, they've got ALC and Barrington. And then they've got pneumatics. So what's your ideal scenario? Can you work with those scenarios?
As long as it's backnet.
Yeah, I think BACnet.
Or line.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Or
Yeah,
line bus.
line or BACnet. So in full transparency, I'm not the technician.
I can answer that
Yeah.
question for you here. It's gonna be an easy integration with anything that speaks lawn or echelon, same thing, or backnet.
Modbus.
You're dealing with, or Modbus. Anything using Modbus and easy don't go together, but it's possible. Anything that is running on older proprietary protocols, Trane not included in this group. If it's a Trane system, Trane is the most amazing backwards compatible platform I've ever seen for anything. But if it's like an old, your Barrington system, a pre-BACnet ALC system, those are going to require a controls retrofit to be able to.
Yeah, there may be some limitations.
Whether that's a Trane retrofit or a different control system like a modern ALC with BACnet, then that's up to the building owner.
Our intent isn't to fix and build all these buildings. Our intent is to get data and wrap education around it and have a front end with graphics that are marketable to our community to bring them to our college.
Yeah.
That's the intent of concept that this is going for. Obviously, the business end and the back end, Trane would love to replace every controller in every building or chiller or whatever else it is. That doesn't matter. That's their business model.
Yeah.
I'm talking about our goals here as educators is to bring that influence and analytics to that classroom and back to us. That's right.
I don't want to be the guy who stops a good conversation every time. So this time, I'm not. I'm going to ask the group. We've got lunch now. It's ready. Do we want to continue this conversation through lunch, or do we want to break into small groups to continue the conversation in smaller? It's up to you. I don't care. I just don't want to.
Yeah, just chat and open up my floor later.
Yeah, no, I'll be available for questions. I'm sure that there's some things that are noodling in the old brain. This doesn't have to be right now where you have your questions. So I'll be around. Love to chat and expand dialogue and talk about some of the other institutions that are already on this journey and get more specifics to you. But the concept of a video, a webcast to kind of go into it, that would be phenomenal.
Again, one final question. Obviously, people consider their data proprietary, and a lot of these buildings are a little sick, perhaps.
Yeah.
And they don't want too much exposure. How do you protect the data? What kind of safeguards, guardrails for?
Yeah, I think that's a fair discussion. The data, if you're sharing it, you're sharing your data. It's not going out to the public domain. It would just be those that are part of the federation, as I believe you call it.
For the children. It's as simple as that. They can't argue with that.
I can tell you that. I mean, we have NSA, FBI buildings. I mean, data security is. There's no question the data is secure.
I
Okay.
can put on my facility director hat and say, look, I want to purge that data.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
want
those people have been
take it out.
guilty too long, Peter.
Take it out of the cloud.
Yeah.
Well, they can try, but if it's an educational initiative for the children, I'm telling you, this is the train we're going to send right through their door. Pun intended.
All right.
Whatever's coming out.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys and gals. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.